Okay. Okay, so we were learning yesterday this idea that if a person buys defective merchandise and as a result, um, he's, yeah, oh, sorry. As a result, he sustains financial loss. Um, the the person who provided the defective material in many instances is considered to be acting through grumma and is going to be exempt from paying. So this was um, this was the first thing that we saw as far as Hilchos Shmira. Um, And so we followed up a little bit, trying to look at a comparable case of where a person would be chayav, where a person orders something and goes through a lot of expense trying to transport it. So there we said that if the item turns out to be defective, if it was known to the seller will be liable for both taking the merchandise back and for paying for the guy's transportation. That's if he knew about it. If he didn't know about it, he's only obligated to take the item and get it off the hands of the buyer. But in here, when it comes to the laws of damages, apparently, you can't hold the guy liable for damages in a situation where through the use of that appliance, a person sustains damage. Now, of course, I don't think secular law works that way. If a person buys a car and the car is defective, then obviously the automaker is going to be held liable. And those types of legislation that come from the government are done in order to make sure that auto manufacturers are meticulous in the way that they manufacture cars. So when it comes to certain industries, many times a government will come down harder than what the halacha requires because, you can't compare the situation of an auto manufacturer to, let's say, a mom and pop operation, where the damage is not so significant. So, for example, the situation is I borrow a barrel from you, and it turns out that the barrel had a hole or it wasn't watertight or whatever it was. So, I lost my wine, you know, but these are all, they're all different. I guess each industry has to be taken into its own. Okay. So, lahalvos pikdonos la'acherim. So the question is as follows. Mishi yesh biyado kol minei pikdonot shel acherim. A person has a number of different items that do not belong to him in his possession. He's taken them as pikdonot. Now, pikdonot is a generic term. A pikadon is a generic term. It means something that is not mine, that is in my possession for one reason or another. It could be that I lent someone money, and so they left me a pikadon as security on the loan. I don't have a right to access that item. It's not mine. I'm just holding it until the guy pays back his money. Like a person who owns a pawn shop and will take items that he'll pawn, and the guy that creates a short-term loan. And if the guy doesn't come back with the money, I get to keep the security. There are other situations of a picadon where I've been left with an item for safekeeping because the guy's going out of town and he wants to leave me with his dog Fluffy, and I'm watching Fluffy. That's also a picadon. That's also an item that is left for safekeeping. Okay. So anyway, let's say I'm watching an item that belongs to somebody else, and the owner has given me permission to use the item for my own needs while he's away. So, for example, um, the guy left me a garage full of appliances, and he says, while I'm away, feel free to use these items. And he leaves them in my possession. Yesh lishol כשמבקשים הלוואה ממנו ואין לו משלו אלא רק לאותם הפיקדונות, האם חייב להלוותם, או שלא קיבל רשוס מהבעלים, אינו יכול להלווסם. What if a person is asked if he, someone, so let's say I have my friends, we're talking about uh, inclement weather. So let's say a guy has lent me his snowblower. And he said, sure, when I'm out of town, feel free to use the snowblower. And I left it in my garage. Now the question is, someone else wants to borrow the snowblower. So my neighbor on my right side lent me the snowblower. My neighbor on my left would like to borrow a snowblower. All I have is my friend's snowblower. Am I allowed to lend that snowblower to my neighbor, my other neighbor, if I didn't get express permission from the owner of the snowblower? So the answer is, as you might have intuited, well, first of all, what is your intuition? What does your intuition tell you? Yeah.
I think not. I
Yeah.
think not because he could misuse it. He knew when the guy let you use it, he thought you're a reliable person. So it doesn't extend beyond you, I don't think.
Right. Okay. So, מי שיש בידו פיקדונות משל אחר, אף על פי שיש לו רשות להשתמש בהם מצד הדין. So even though he's allowed to use it when he borrows items or is watching these items for safekeeping, אין עליו חיוב להלוותם לאחרים. There's no obligation for him to do the chesed of lending them to others. In other words, the guy feels out of a sense of compassion. My poor neighbor here, he's 80 years old and he needs a snowblower. I suppose I could snow blow it for him, but I can't. First of all, I have no obligation to lend him this item. Kevin shah mitzvah vim kesef talvis ami eno elorak lemishi yesh lo kesef Michel atzmo. He says that the mitzvah to lend to other people is only applicable when the item belongs to you. Veraki mosa kain mitzad chesed ba'alma yesh lo mitzvah. וכל זה דווקא אם קיבל על עצמו הלווה שכשיבקש הנפקד ממנו ישלם לו תקף את מה שקיבל. He says, when you want to do a chesed, you have this mitzvah, but here you don't have such a mitzvah. But then he concludes with a bizarre sentence. He says, "V'chol ze dafka im kibel al atzmo haloiva," that this is all assuming that the person who borrowed the item, kesheyivakesh hanifkad mimenu yishalim lo tekef es ma shekibel, that when the 1 second, shekesheyivakesh hanifkad mimenu, when he asks him for the item that was left for him for safekeeping back, Yishalim lo tekef es ma shekibel, he'll give him immediately back what he received. Okay.
Himself rented it out to the neighbor.
Yeah, I mean, when I borrow something or when something is given to me for safekeeping, I have to return it on demand. So the fact that that's another reason I think, although it's not, the language does not indicate that. He says, he writes, Ein lo rishus lahalvos hamos lalchem sheyavu lebasof litvoa piktono bevadai mechuyev lahachzer lo tekef. He says one of the reasons why you can't lend out money or goods to other people that are not yours is because when the owner comes, you're gonna have to surrender whatever you have of his on demand. V'lo nitim rishus leishnamish kodem sheyavo. V'chemuchach me'asma. The language is off here. But he's quoting the Chafetz Chaim in Ahavas Chesed, Perek Aleph, Os Yud Gimel. The Chafetz Chaim as we all know, wrote a sefer on the mitzvah of doing chesed with other people, including loans and including other forms of chesed, of lending people items. So in Avas Chesed, what does the Chafetz Chaim say? Let's see. Okay. Here we go. Chelik Aleph. What do we say? Perak Aleph Os Yud Gimel. Im yesh biyado mos shel acherim bepikadon, afilu bizmanenu she'anu chashuvim kechen v'ni v'shulchani demutar lishtamish la'atzmo. If someone has left you money for safekeeping, even though nowadays we're considered to be money changers in the sense that we're not expected to give back the exact money that was given to us. Im lo hifkid etzlo tzurun v'chasumin, unless the person gave it to you in a sealed container, meaning that if a person gives me cash in a sealed container, I don't have permission to break open the seal in order to take the money. But if a person gives me a wad of cash and says, here, do me a favor, watch over this while I'm gone, I have a right to take some of the cash or use it to change. Let's say it's in smaller bills and I need smaller bills. I can replace a 20 for 2 10s, okay? Afilu hachi lilvos hamos lilavot hamos lacherim ein lo rishus, ela im kain kibel al atzmo shekesheyavakesh anifkad mimenu yishalim lo tekef. Okay, now it makes sense. The language that he provided in our sefer was totally off. So here's the thing. What we're talking about is when someone leaves me cash, okay? When someone leaves me cash, so then I don't have a right to lend that cash to other people unless I have immediate cash available to replace it. So if a guy leaves me an envelope with cash that's unsealed, and he says, here, do me a favor, I need a place to park this. I don't feel comfortable leaving it in my empty house when I go to Florida. I say, no problem. It'll be waiting here for you when you come back. And I see someone needs a significant amount of cash. So am I allowed to lend my friend's cash to that individual? The answer is no, unless you have ample cash of your own readily available, immediately available, that you can surrender when your friend comes back, even if you know that he's not coming back for 2 months, okay? And you figure it's totally safe for me to lend his money to somebody else in the interim because he's not going to need it for 2 months. You don't have permission to do that unless you could immediately replace the cash with your own. Okay.
That's if it's a wad, but if it's really tightly sealed.
If it's sealed, then you don't have a right to break the seal. No, even if you have the cash to replace it with. Because for whatever reason the guy sealed the cash, it means he doesn't want anyone to access it at all.
Lick the envelope and give it to him before you go. Say, doesn't open the envelope. No.
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on the relationship. And also it could be that there's no harm, no foul, you know.
That actually, this sort of thing did really happen. My father was prone to being very helpful to a lot of South Africans back in the 80s when they were having trouble. Remember, they were having trouble getting their money out, and he had some connections that people were giving him lots of cash, to get out because they wanted to get out of South Africa. They wanted to get their money and assets out of it, so. That was actually happening.
But whose money did he use? He used his own money, or he used?
No, they were entrusting him with these wads of cash, you know.
I see. I see.
Hold until he got to Canada.
Wow. How did your father get the wads? People would come from South Africa
And he went. Sometimes, a few times, 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, there were strict rules as to how much you could take out. So if someone was just coming to visit and said, I was coming to visit with Joe, he wanted to take money, I could give me the money to bring because I had an allowance to bring.
uh-huh.
And I'd bring it out and then give it to his father to hold.
Interesting. Yeah. Is that still the case?
Just the South African money isn't worth anything. It's not worth anything.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
It's been so devalued, eh?
Canadian dollars like 13 to 1.
Ah, and the Canadian dollar itself is weak. And it used to be what, on par?
At one stage, the South African rand is stronger than the US dollar.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a gold. Yeah.
Because it had a gold base.
Yeah.
Even now, if you travel with more than $10,000 cash, or you put it in the bank, 10,000 or more, flags go up all over the place, you have to declare it. You ask about money laundering and all kinds of stuff.
They have dogs at the airport that happened to me. I was going to Israel one. And this dog all of a sudden comes and starts sniffing around, and I had a little wad of cash in my pocket. There's dogs that can sniff out cash. It's crazy.
I wonder if you vacuum seal it. Just trying to think. Okay. All right. So that makes, so again, it was the lack of he was just quoting from the Chafetz Chaim, but it was all jumbled language. That's why it didn't make sense. Okay. Next. Okay. She'ela. Misha Omar lechavero shmor li laotam chafatzim shenimtzaim etzlecha. וגם אני אשמור לך לאותם הדברים ששחיים לך אצלי, יש לשאול איזה דין של שומרים יש עליהם. So we know that there's 2 types of shomer chinam, shomer sacher, right? What happens, shomer chinam is a person who's an unpaid guard. He watches your item for free. A shomer sacher is a person who is compensated for watching your item. What happens if 2 people agree to watch each other's item for free? So I'll watch your item, you watch my item. Are we both now shomer sachars or are we shomer chinams? And what's the nafkamina? What difference does it make? A shomer chinam is exempt for theft and loss, and a shomer sachar is liable for theft and loss. Okay, so what's the answer? Misha Omer lechaveru shmor li veshmor lecha shneim nasu shomer sacher zelazeh. So the answer is fairly straightforward. Since they're both benefiting from their watching their guardianship, so then they're both considered to be a shomer sacher. The idea is, even if you're not being paid in cash, but you're being paid in some benefit, you still have a din of a shomer sacher.
So the use of the snowblower.
That would be a benefit. You'd become a shomer sacher because you're benefiting from using the snowblower. V'cheina omer shmor li v'ashil chayfetz dina shomer kishomer sacher. Also, if a person says, if you watch this item for me, shmor li v'ashil chayfetz, if you watch this for me, I'll lend you something else, right? You're getting compensated in some way for your guardianship, and therefore you didn't have a shomer sacher. That's fairly simple.
It's a simultaneous exchange, not like a certain time. So
Right. I don't know that it has to be simultaneous in time. It does, but one has to be conditional upon the other, meaning that there's got to be a quid pro quo that says basically, in exchange for you watching this for me, I'll give you a certain benefit. It could even be if it's somewhere down the road.
secular law is exactly the same. If they both get consideration, then it's considered a bailey for consideration. as opposed to gratuitous bailment where only one benefits usually. Same law.
Oh, yeah. Next, Shomer Zachar shemekabel tashlum avur shmirato me'imatay mitchayiv al shmirato.
Can you put back on the
Oh, I'm sorry. Did it drop? I apologize for that. Okay. Okay. A Shomer Zachar who is getting paid for his guardianship, for his bail something, what for his bailment. Yes. Shomer Zachar shemekabel tashlum avur shmiraso. A paid bailer who is getting paid for his bailment. Okay. Me'emasai mischayv al shmiraso. So at what point does he become liable for the item? At what point of his accepting guardianship or bailment does he become liable? Shomer, so the answer is Shomer Sachayna mischayv b'shmiraso ela ad sheyimshoch uv'makom shorei limshoch v'rak az hamashicha kone. It's only when he takes physical possession of the item. And it has to be done, taking physical possession, it has to be done at a place where a person can acquire something. Meaning that if he does it, so he's quoting in the footnote, Shomer Sachar einu chayv ad sheyimshoch, right? So which means that if the guy leaves it in a parking lot, okay, he says, listen, I'm leaving my car in the parking lot, okay, and then I'm going to the airport. Will you watch my car for me? And I'll pay you $20 a week or whatever it is for you to keep your car, my car in your, after you drive it away, you'll keep it in your driveway. Guy says, fine, no problem. So then what happens is he leaves it in the parking lot, let's say at the promenade, and I'm supposed to pick it up from there. And before I have a chance to pick it up, someone crashes into it, someone backs into it. So I haven't yet taken physical possession of it, even though I've already made the deal that the guy's going to give me $20 for the week. I'm not liable for that damage because I hadn't yet taken physical possession. Okay, that's pretty straightforward as well. Okay. Next. A guy has a certain piece of merchandise that he has been unsuccessful in selling. And his friend says, here, bring it over to my place and I'll sell it for you. A consignment deal, okay? And the owner of the merchandise says, look, I need to get $100 out of this merchandise. Whatever you can sell it for above that is yours. Is that a consignment deal? Sort of? What would you call that? What kind of deal would you call that?
Mission, sale, it's probably consignment. Right?
So the question now is, v'yesh ladun eza din shel shomer yesh alav kasher omer lo chavero hamotar yesh shalach. So what is my status while I'm watching that merchandise? So Ron has produced a line of dresses. He's having trouble moving them. So I have a department store or some kind of store, and I say, Ron, I think I can sell these. I have a good showcase, and I've got just the clientele that I think would be interested in this dress. So let me take possession of it, and I'll do my best to sell them, and I'll sell them at a price where I guarantee you'll get $100 out of each dress, and I'll take the rest. Okay, so far so good. That's a real situation. So then there's a fire in the department store. Okay, who's liable for those dresses? Or the department store gets broken into and they steal all the dresses. Who's liable? Okay.
There's an invoice to the insurance company.
Right. So there's usually insurance, but whose liability? Now, it all depends. Is the guy who's selling the dresses, is he considered to be a shomer chinam or a shomer sachar? So it sounds like he should be a shomer sachar. It would seem that way. So anyway, let's see what he says. Mi shomer lechavero tavi leachefetz vani imkaro. So imamar lo balachefetz im timkario bekach lekach sikum v'hamosar yesh shalach yesh al oso mocher din shel somer chasachar. Yeah, he has a din of a shomer sachar because he's benefiting, or he stands to benefit. V'afal pisha shosak yishakibel esachefetz. And that's true, even if he didn't, there was no express guarantee of guardianship, of bailment. There was no guarantee of bailment, but nonetheless, it's automatic. Anytime a person stands to benefit through taking possession or taking bailment of someone else's property, he immediately becomes a shomer sachar, and therefore he'll be liable for theft or loss. The only thing he won't be liable for is complete onus. Let's say, a bolt of lightning, or, some other act of God, or, the store gets bombed by Iran, and the store is gone, and so is all the merchandise. So that would be considered an onus. There was nothing this guy could have done to prevent it from happening. But fire and other kinds of loss and theft would be considered something that he would be liable for. So yes, of course, we assume he'd have insurance and stuff like that, but it would have to be his insurance that would have to kick in. Okay.
But if I board your car and then I got in an accident, the blame or your insurance would get situated, not mine.
Right, because insurance companies work differently in different jurisdictions, right? But let's assume for whatever reason that the insurance basically said, well, you had no right for that guy to drive your car. He's a high-risk driver, and therefore we're not covering the claim. So the question is then who is liable? The guy who borrows the car is going to be liable in most situations because he's a shomer sachar. Because he's actually a shoel. And a shoel, a guy who borrows an item for personal use, has an even higher level of liability than a shomer sachar. A shomer sachar can claim exemption from ones, but a shoel cannot. The only thing that a shoel can claim exemption for, a borrower, is meta machmas malacha, that if the animal that he borrows dies in the natural course of work. So in the case of a car, if a guy borrows your car and the engine just drops out of the car while he's driving it, complete normal use. It wasn't doing anything abnormal. So then he can claim exemption because it died in the natural course of work. Okay. But barring that, if let's say the guy is in an accident, or even better, even if someone hits him while the car is parked, the borrower is going to be liable for all damage. Okay. All right, so I think we'll hold it here for today. Have a great day, everybody.